Hi everyone, and welcome to Behind the Numbers. My name is Dave Bookbinder. I'm a Senior Director of Valuation Services at CFGI, and this is the show where we dig a little bit deeper to understand what really matters most in business. Today we're talking about the roles and responsibilities of a CFO, but I've got a special guest who has taken the role of a CFO into what I'll call a transformational level, and I'm pleased to welcome Rob Delany, who's the Chief Financial Officer of Public Financial Management. Rob, welcome to Behind the Numbers.
Thank you, Dave. Thrilled to be here.
Cool. We're thrilled to have you. I typically ask my guests at the beginning of the program just to give a little bit about their personal, professional background and the firm that they work with, and then we'll dive into the topics at hand, if you would.
Absolutely. Happy to do that. And so I have been writing for a lot of years on transformation, culture, transformational leadership. Currently, I'm Chief Financial Officer of Public Financial Management. And we're the leading financial services organization in the country. Our clients are governments and nonprofits, so we do advising that goes into the financing of the building of airports and railports, stadiums, water systems, that sort of thing. So we have a lot of clients all over the country. And they're generally speaking governments and nonprofits. So nonprofit would be a university, a health system, that sort of thing.
Right, and you wear the hat of the Chief Financial Officer, which means a lot of things for a lot of people. Chief cook and bottle washer, I'm sure, but you've taken it to kind of a transcendent level, and you mentioned transformational leadership, and I know we're going to spend some time talking about that today.
Yes.
What is transformational leadership?
Sure. Well, transformation, we start with that, is a dramatic change. In the natural world, that's sometimes referred to as a metamorphosis. Transformational leadership is creating tremendous change, positive change, but doing it by inspiring and motivating people. And that's really what it comes down to. So we're existing in this ecosystem of people and a corporate culture, that soup, and transformational leadership is about really inspiring and motivating people so that you can achieve your greater goals.
Okay, and we're going to talk about those goals and so forth, but I know that we have a graphic that we want to put on the screen here because I think we want to talk about the steps that are involved in transformational leadership. So, production crew, here we go. Rob,
great.
If you can speak to that.
As we talk about transformation, and the question really is, transformational leadership, is there a process to this, or is this, smoke and mirrors and magic? And the fact of the matter is, it is a process. Like most processes, it's a loop process. In finance, what's really important is to be a good listener. And that's in most things in life, right? So we start off with listening. And from that listening, what you really have to do is you have to get the message and you have to distill down the message, the goals. And what we have to do is we have to change goals and strategies into action plans. And so that's really the big first step, beside the listening, is to really translate this all into a plan. As we create this plan, we have to communicate, and then we have to create buy-in amongst our constituencies, amongst the people. Now this is a process which is difficult because this is a distance run. This is not a sprint. This is a long journey, and through that journey you have to figure out who are the folks that are going to help carry the water in this journey, because that's really important. And so unfortunately you're going to have to, along the way, exit non-believers. You have to exit non-believers, but you also have to embrace the believers, and you got to get help in this process. So as we talk about it, and as I look at this and have looked at this throughout my career, you can do very little if you don't involve your friends. Okay, and that's really what this is all about. So as you get to the process, you have to get others involved, and then along the way you have to celebrate. So it's really important to celebrate. Again, this is a distance run, and you have to celebrate your wins and your progress and so on and so forth. And then again, it's a loop. So you have to go back into the listening. You got to adjust. You have to celebrate. You have to reformulate and pivot your plans accordingly.
Yeah, so you walk this walk. This is how you conduct yourself in your day-to-day. Where did you learn these things? I know your background's pretty extensive prior to PFM. Talk a little bit about that and where you incorporated these techniques.
Sure. Well, early on, I had a couple of skills. One was figuring things out, and the other was explaining that in plain English. And whether I was using high math or street smarts to figure things out, what was really important is to be able to explain things in plain English, boards of directors and senior management and that sort of thing. So early on, I was a fix-it guy. I grew up in the trades. I learned how to fix things and diagnose things and then explain that to others. So it's really been an evolutionary process. And when you go from fixing things, diagnosing and fixing things, to building things and create, it's really from that this process has become clear for me.
Yeah, so when you talk about transformational leadership, a lot of components.
Yes.
What's the biggest challenge that you face? I imagine at some point you get resistance either from the team members, the non-believers that you
Sure.
refer to, boards and so forth, but what's been the biggest challenge?
Well, the biggest challenge is you're swimming in this thing called corporate culture, or the organizational culture if you're in a nonprofit or a non-traditional setting. What you have to do is you have to make sure that you can move forward in that culture. And you also have to see, are there ways that you can change that culture and you can make that culture more conducive to what it is that you're trying to do, which is inspire and motivate people to achieve organizational and great goals. And so it's really about this culture that's important.
So when you talk about inspiring and motivating, what's been your experience in terms of what happens to the organization when you get that buy-in?
Well, when you get the buy-in, what you experience is, after you get over some anxieties that come with ambiguity, because what we're talking about is change, what you get is explosive growth. That's what you get. And so in the world I grew up in the organizations that I've been with, we talk about growth in multiples as opposed to percents and low single-digit percents. And that's the result of transformational leadership and really going after a dream.
That's great. And I want to pursue that in just a second, but very quickly for the audience, if they want to learn more about transformational leadership or more about you, how can they learn more and contact you? Sure.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm fairly prolific on LinkedIn and Twitter. Also very reachable on my email. My personal email is Rob, R-O-B, @ rjdelaney.com. And I'm always available. I have lots of a willingness for lunches and breakfasts and coffees and that sort of thing. So always happy to make some friends.
That's great. Appreciate that. So what you just spoke to is inside the numbers. So the show here is behind the numbers,
yes.
But it's always fascinating for our viewers to understand that when they do these kinds of transformational leadership endeavors, that they really do manifest not just organizational change, but performance.
Yes.
And you talk about growth. Can you speak to some other things that you've seen in terms of the numbers, if you will, Rob, being
Sure.
CFO?
Absolutely. So the first thing I would say, Dave, is as finance professionals, we have to be more than custodians of the learning. Okay? We really have to go out and evangelize that. Our role is storyteller and teacher. That's really, for me, that's really the substance of what this has come down to. So numbers talk to me. Numbers talk to you. There's a story there. We're good listeners on the numbers. Not everybody sees that. And so what we need to do is we need to get out and help and create understanding. Once you create understanding, you have some of the most talented people in your organization, client-facing, back-office people that are very good at what they're doing, and you set them on fire, okay? And so that's really, and so whether we're increasing a margin because we're dramatically dropping the cost structure, whether we're dropping the cost structure because we're taking in a great partner, that's really important. I have some of my partners, and over time, people come and talk to me about acquisition and what they might think is a competitor. Well, I don't know. Is it a competitor if they join your family? So why don't we start a conversation with them? And that's really where this growth, this whole growth catalyst. So I think in finance, we can be much more on the catalyst side of the world as opposed to this custodial of information librarian role.
Great characterization. We only have about 2 minutes or so to go in this first segment, but
Sure.
I want to touch on acquisitions because you've been involved in a number of those.
Sure.
What happens to organizations when you're merging two cultures, and how do you do it successfully?
Well, the first thing you have to do is there's a lot of education. So I call it investor education. It's constituent education. And so what you have to do is you have to be honest. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is what our mission is. We're cut from the same cloth. And you have to start making those connections and people have to understand why we're better together. And that's really, for me, that's the evolution process. People recognizing how we're better together. When I taught finance, I would take my students down what I call this path of understanding. They're really teaching themselves. Once you taught yourself something, you can't unlearn it. You can't forget it, whether it's for an exam or otherwise. And so it's really, that's the biggest process in acquisitions.
Because you know firsthand that most deals don't produce the desired synergies. The 1 + 1 = 3.
Absolutely.
Depending on your sources of data, up to 85% don't produce that.
Sure.
So for the leaders who are watching, if they're about to embark on an acquisition, is there one key component that you would share with them that they need to be mindful of as they're doing it?
Absolutely. Closing the deal, making the acquisition and signing the papers is the beginning. It is not the end of doing an acquisition. And the hard work really comes from that. So it's not just about the financing. Hire consultants, smart people that come in and can help you communicate together, can help you work together and that sort of thing. So closing a deal is the beginning, it's not the end. That's the most important thing that I've learned.
Great point. And on that note, we're going to pause and take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Behind the Numbers after this commercial message.
Add us on social media to watch bloopers, behind-the-scenes footage, previews, and more.
TV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in to RVN TV shows monthly. We guarantee a great experience that you'll be sharing with everyone you know while increasing your personal and company's brand awareness. But what is your brand? According to Forbes, it's a combination of your logo, your product, your design and feel, and your personality. Did you know that aside from being a guest, we offer even more opportunity to boost your brand? Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly. Incorporating images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, you can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent digital copy of your live segment to link to your social media, embed into your company website, or use in email marketing. Investing in your brand is so very important, and we can't wait to have you as a guest.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Behind the Numbers. I'm Dave Bookbinder, and today my guest is Chief Financial Officer Rob Delany. And if you've watched the first segment, you know we've been talking about Rob and transformational leadership. And it would be no surprise to anybody who watched the first segment to know that you're actually the recipient of an award for CFO of the Year very recently.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, Rob. I know you're a modest guy, but do it anyway.
Well, thank you, Dave, and thanks for mentioning that. This was a really a big honor for me. You know, like a lot of CFOs, you're really into your craft. You're into people. And what was exciting for me is my alma mater, Drexel University, nominated me for this. So that was, you know, there was an honor on top of this, which is an organization that you love and you're passionate about, and still today support the students and the kids, our young people. You know, to have them go and nominate me for that. That was great, and it's been great. I got to meet a lot of terrific people. People are making positive change in the world. So it's been really exciting to be able to receive an award like that.
Well deserved.
Thank
And
you.
as a Drexel MBA myself, on behalf of the organization, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's jump back into the topic at hand.
Sure.
I know that you wrote an article, 7 trends in cultivating transformational leadership. And for the folks in the production room, I think we have a graphic that we're going to go to here. Can you talk a little bit about that article and what are these trends,
Absolutely.
Rob?
So I was compelled to write this and the things that I'm seeing. So what I'm seeing in the future, and so the old top-down organization, that's gone. What we're seeing, and we're going to be seeing more of, is smaller networked groups. The C-suite is not this rule-based cop out there. The C-suite are those folks, the leaders, that need to help people see the big picture, and also to motivate these and manage these network groups. So there's a focus on rewarding exceptionalism. The promotion ladder based on time is gone. That's out. What we have to do is we have to promote and reward people that are producing exceptional results. And that's really a big thing. Building in greater transparency. You get on the field, you're playing the game, you want to be a champion. You're not looking at where was the player a month ago. Okay, the monthly meeting and diagnosis, that's out. Real data, dashboards, and calling signals and understanding where your teammates are on things, that's important. So this is a much more current structure. And the next three items on the list would be, if we can go to the
next slide.
The next slide, terrific. There's a focus on training and learning. We have to learn and relearn how to learn. Repetitive execution of root processes is not good enough. We have to be adaptable, and we're going to have to, learning is going to take a much bigger role in the organization going forward. Organizations have to get out ahead of technology. It used to be that you would kind of do a scan of the landscape, try to see where technology's going, and you want to say, well, once it gets entrenched, then I'm going to go with this. The best organizations are out there, they're pioneers, they're exploring new technology, they're setting the trends. And I think we're going to see more and more of that going forward.
That's fascinating stuff there. Let's unpack a little bit of it.
Sure.
One of the key takeaways I got from that was this is a data-driven endeavor.
Absolutely.
How do you go about collecting the performance data, especially when you think about the intangible component that people bring?
Absolutely. So we got to look at the numbers. We have to build databases. We have to do all of the important things like looking at trends and common size P&Ls and so on and so forth. We have to look at the cycles, and then we have to talk about that. So we have to bring that up into our game. Okay, and we have to make that a part of the learning process and the real-time process. And so that's what we're doing today. So we're seeing we're seeing not monthly closes. We're seeing we have an experience of a financial transaction. It's going right away in the general ledger. And that general ledger is that source where we're seeing where our dashboards are coming from. So people can see what's happening. What are they billing? What work are they doing? Where are the people spending their time? They're also seeing, what is my expected profit? What's my progress? I got this annual goal. What's my progress towards that? Am I collecting my receivables? All of this has to come up front for those people that are helping to manage the business out in the field.
When you talk about learning and development, I'm actually on a panel this week on a topic that's going to cover some of those things. An interesting stat that I recently heard was that the average age that someone becomes a manager is 31.
Yeah.
And the average age when somebody gets their first training to be a manager is 42. And we grew up in a profession where you're promoted based on technical expertise.
Sure.
Maybe you're given the title of manager, but it doesn't mean you can manage people.
Absolutely.
So in your world of training and development, how do you bridge those gaps?
The tragedy of this is when executives' careers and managers' careers go off track, it's never because they don't know the technical aspects. It's because they don't know people and how to unlock the value of people and to motivate. And so that's really key. At PFM, we were very big into technical training. We took a look at this 7 years ago, 5 years ago, and we said, my goodness, after all this tremendous training when we hire these students out of programs, we teach them all this bond math and other stuff, but we don't teach them how to give feedback and how to be mentors and how to be leaders and how to communicate. And so we had this tremendous infusion of training around. These are learned skills. Just because they're soft does not mean that they're not important. So these are learned skills, and we have to have a curriculum for our people so that we can bring them along.
Well said. For the audience who wants to learn more about transformational leadership and Rob Delany, how can they reach you?
LinkedIn is a great way. That's one of my key ways that I communicate, Rob Delany. I'm also on Twitter at Rob J. Delany, D-E-L-A-N-Y. And of course, my email address, personal email address is rob@rjdelany.com.
Thanks, Rob. So when you talk about these steps and the process and so forth,
yes,
one might think that there's an end game, a goal, a finish line, if you will.
Yeah.
Do you need to know where the finish line is when you embark on this transformational journey?
Well, it's great if you do. It's rare if you do. And so, this is all a journey. It's not just a distance run, but this is a journey. Now, it's good if you have an idea of the direction. It's important to have an idea of the direction that you want to go to. But it's also important to understand that you don't have to, if you can't vividly describe where you're going to at the very beginning, that's okay. That's not a reason for not taking the first step on that journey. We expanded into Europe, my company, my current company, and for 43 years we had operated solely in the United States. We wanted to, and when we went to Europe and to do our market assessment, we thought we were going to lead with investment management. What we're leading with is financial advisory and budget consulting for municipalities. So we, as we got in there, we didn't ignore the learning. We didn't say, well, geez, here's what we want to do, and that's the only thing we're willing to do. We got in there and we said, wow, there is a tremendously underserved constituency, and we think we can help. And so you got to be open to that.
Interesting. So one of the things you talked about before, you alluded to the idea of weeding out the non-believers.
Yes.
So how do you identify the non-believers, and how do you create the inspiration, if you will, to get people to buy into the bigger mission?
Sure. Well, one of the things that's important, that's tricky and is tricky here is you do have to inspire. You can't fake being inspirational. Okay, it doesn't work. People can see through that. So it's really important that, number one, you really believe in your mission and what it is that you're doing, and you can see that some people are not comfortable with ambiguity and not comfortable with change. You also will see that people either intentionally or unintentionally sabotage efforts. And when you see that, you really have to deal with that, and you have to deal with that in a thoughtful. So we talk about, what's important is to lead with passion, but also to lead with compassion. And so so you can't blame people for not doing something they've never been asked to do. Okay, number one. And number two, you have to be human in this whole process. So if it turns out that there is not a fit, well, then you need to deal with and come up with ways on where there might be a better fit for people either inside the organization or out.
We have a couple minutes left in the program, Rob. It's going fast. One of the last things I want to make sure that we touch on is interaction with boards of directors and the C-suite. So for the CFOs who are watching, or other transformational leaders in organizations, because you don't just have to have a title that starts with a C to be a leader.
Absolutely.
How do you advise them in, we'll call it up messaging to the board and their leadership teams?
Sure. Well, this is actually an area of anxiety for board members that I talk with, also the C-suite, because the board members are saying, the world is changing. What is my role in that? And I know I'm not management, but what is my role, and how can I be supportive of that? You can be supportive by asking the right questions and by engaging management in that process. So what's really important is to try to elevate your view of the situation, and to try to assemble and imagine a much larger set of options for the organization. And then from that, so you got to go big, and then you gotta then kind of bring it down and get with the team. So this is an all play, and this is a team sport. And that's really what it comes down to. So you gotta go up, and you gotta go big. You gotta get a view of the landscape. You gotta assemble ideas, and then you gotta get back with the team, and you gotta think about, is this something that we could do? When you do that, you're gonna go around the room, and you're gonna see more people leaning in. You're gonna see more people, the head going up and down, that sort of thing. So it's really important to engage.
Yeah, definitely. And you're taking this to a new level, and the good news is there are other folks out there watching who are like you, who are breaking through barriers. And when people ask, does this stuff really work, you can give them a resounding, yeah, you bet, right? Absolutely.
It works. It is scary, and you have to be willing to go out there and to take some risks. But the results are prevalent. Transformational leadership has been around a long time. Alexander the Great, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Henry Ford. I mean, there's lots and lots of examples. Pick a hero. So pick a hero, pick somebody that, and start to learn about their leadership traits, and then think about, how can I bring that down to this soul here, and how can I incorporate that and maybe create some good?
Great advice. Rob, on that note, unfortunately, we've got to wrap it up. So thank you very much for being my guest today.
Thank you.
We had a great conversation with Rob Delany, Transformational Leader and Chief Financial Officer at Public Financial Management, or PFM. My name is Dave Bookbinder, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Numbers.
Thank you.